Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to session 2 of part 1. Now we're going to discuss, as mentioned previously, that in paragraph 13 of Keeping Children Safe in Education, there were 2 points that were made. One was about adding procedures in your child protection policy about how to deal with peer and peer abuse, which we have covered. But the second point was about the fact that your behaviour policy should include measures to prevent bullying, including cyberbullying, prejudice-based bullying and discriminatory bullying. So that's what we're going to discuss now.
So, just to mention that then, some schools may be thinking, well, we've already addressed bullying in our behaviour policy. What Khadija has just mentioned, it's measures to prevent bullying, which is the most important part now. So you may already have that in your behaviour policy, fantastic if you do, but for the number of policies that both myself and Khadija have reviewed, that isn't the case. It's how schools will deal with bullying, and that it's important that schools will sanction any pupils undertaking that act, but it doesn't talk about prevention, and that's the difference. So as well as changes to your safeguarding policy, the changes to keeping children safe requires you to make changes to other policies, and as you would be expected to share part of your staff training, we would strongly advise that you share the changes to your behaviour policy to staff in September. Okay, thank you, Khadija.
Okay. So what you're saying now is a school's response to bullying should not start at the point after which a child has been bullied. So that is why they're saying preventative measures should be in place so the bullying doesn't take place in the first place. So the best schools develop a sophisticated approach in which staff proactively gather intelligence about issues between pupils which might provoke conflict and develop strategies to prevent bullying occurring in the first place. So I'm just going to mention something about information sharing here and why it's so crucial. If staff shared information regularly about their pupils, so where there was a clash of personalities between two pupils, if that was shared, then you can put some measures in place to stop that from escalating into a bullying incident. And that's why it's so important that schools have these preventative measures in place and are not just dealing with bullying after it's happened. What Ofsted want to see is now, like Hasina said, they want to see what the schools are doing to prevent bullying happening in the first place.
Khadija, actually, you gave a really fantastic example there of conflict between two personalities in the school setting. Yeah. If you can see that children are not getting on, what measures are you taking to prevent that from escalating? Where, of course, it might not happen on school site, but now with pupil access to Instagram and all sorts of other things, Khadija will be able to elaborate on this in much greater depth later. This is where the bullying takes place. This is where pupils feel harmed. And so it's really important that you are able to demonstrate to anyone coming into your school that you were able to gather intelligence, as Khadija has written there, and take that and as a school decide actions that need to be taken and that you document that. So if you can see conflict between two personalities, what steps are you taking? And as I referred to earlier, how are you recording this? So we spoke to the pupils. This is what we did. We spoke to parents. This is where we put in additional supervision. Whatever action it is that you've taken, how have you prevented bullying from taking place? And you should be able to demonstrate that to anybody who asks. If I was to look at your behaviour records, if I was to review difficulties between two particular pupils, then I'd want to see that you've taken this intelligence gathering exercise to prevent it from escalating. And that's really important. To stop things from escalating is why this is now being included in the guidance. because we don't want it to get to that point. We want to be able to stop it from happening in the first place. Have schools done enough is the question that will be asked of you. So really important that this bit is given due regard, that leaders are sitting down and reviewing current procedures, that you are including those procedures in your behaviour policies and other documentation, that people are clear about what needs to happen when you get difficulties between particular pupils. And often we ask questions, myself and Khadija, in talking to schools, do you have minutes, staff meeting minutes, where you have discussed concerns between pupils, where staff have had an opportunity to raise concerns about things that are happening in the classroom? Are your referral processes or concern processes clear about when concerns should be raised? We've gone into numerous schools and we've seen that when it only gets very serious, are concerns being recorded and passed on to leaders. If I can see that there are difficulties between two particular pupils in a classroom, I should raise that at very initial stages to those that need to know. Are you seeing that? Would I see that if I was to look at records of concerns? Because that should be in your welfare documentation. So I think please do not underestimate how important this is moving forward for you and your schools, and the changes that have been addressed in the Keeping Children Safe document. I think, Khadija, I don't know whether you want to add on to this. I think this is really important, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the measures that we're going to share with you today, they're just some strategies, but again, you've got to personalize it to your setting and your schools and your children. And therefore it is important that you do personalize the measures that work for your school and your pupils, and not just go on generic measures or strategies, because when Ofsted do come, they will look whether those measures are effective. And sometimes, unfortunately, schools do put, they write policies and it's all in the policy, but it's not being implemented. Another thing Ofsted will do is they will check whether the measures that you've put in your behaviour policy and your anti-bullying policy, are they actually being implemented and are they effective? So you've got to use measures that work for your school. So again, like I said, these are just some strategies, some examples, but you've got to do what works for your pupils and what your school for your schools. This might involve talking to pupils about issues of difference, perhaps in lessons, through dedicated events or projects, or through assemblies. You will be able to determine what will work best for your pupils depending on the particular issues that need to be addressed. Again, like I said just now, you've got to work out what works for your schools and the kind of pupils that you've got. What kind of backgrounds do they come from? What difficulties are they facing? Therefore, you need to personalize it according to your schools. To create a culture that reflects respect and safety at all times, using the language of diversity, include and involve pupils. So taking part in Anti-Bullying Week annually, empower staff and pupils. Can
we just go back on that slide, Khadija?
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Because I think you mentioned about Anti-Bullying Week, and although I think that's really important, it's really important that it's not bolted on as part of your culture. That really, I should see it all the time. In the assemblies that you address deliver to your students. It's the lessons that you teach. I wonder if we can just go back a slide as well, Khadija, because you talk about dedicated events or projects. How are you installing in your children, helping them to understand the need to respect each other, the need to demonstrate understanding of difference? How are you doing that? Is it effective? And actually, I think part of this change should bring about a review of your curriculum, your PSHE lessons, your assembly program, Many of you listening to us today will say, well, we already do this. That might be true, but actually, does it require you to review the way that you are doing it? Are particular groups of pupils needing greater attention? I'm going to go back to that point of one size doesn't fit all. We always talk about it in year 8. Do you need to talk about it in year 7? Do you need to change the way that you deliver certain curriculum, where you are trying to embed in children the need for respect for each other, particularly bullying that comes online now? You know, that's been a really fast growing trend. And so how are you as a school changing your curriculum to address those concerns? Khadijah's mentioned about talking to pupils. I think it's really important as well, as you make these changes or you undertake this review, that you speak to groups of people within the school setting, whether that's pupils, whether that's parents, whether that's staff, and ask them, what do they think about your current practice? Do they think it's effective? Do they think it's working well? Would they like to see any changes? What changes do they think would be important? I think everybody needs to have a say. We've talked about involving pupils and staff. It's really important that you involve your parents, give them a platform to share their views. What else would pupils like to see? So we talk about events and projects. What else would they like to see happen in your school, whether it's a primary setting or a secondary setting? Both require you to be able to review and engage with all stakeholders within the school setting. I think it's going to be foolish to look at what we're doing today and say, well, actually, we already teach it, and so that's fine. We don't have to worry about that. I think it's important to review, and an evaluation of your ongoing procedures and practices should take place, and they should evolve as need evolves. So if children now are facing different types of discriminatory bullying, is your curriculum embracing that? Are we placing greater emphasis where it's needed? Those questions really need to be asked, actually, because I think that if there isn't a change, then that means your practices aren't working effectively enough. What you should demonstrate is that the procedures that you've got are having impact. As Khadijah mentioned, often things are contained in policies, but actually, what impact are they having upon your school setting? And sometimes it can just be one case. Schools often will say, well, we don't have bullying in our school. Just a small number of cases are a small number of cases too many. So what is it that you need to do? I think this part really, colleagues, needs for you to take some time to evaluate and look at whether what you're doing needs to be strengthened, or can it remain the same?
So parents should be clear what the school, that the school does not tolerate bullying. So the expectations should be clear to parents as well, so they can then reinforce that at home with their children. Parents should be clear about procedures to follow if they believe that their child is being bullied. So parents also should know exactly what they need to do if their child is being bullied, and the parents should feel confident in the school, that the school will take complaints about bullying seriously and they will resolve the situation and protect their child. It is very, very important that parents are reassured that their child will be protected and the bullying that they report will be taken seriously.
I think for this, Khadijah, it's important that schools share that. How do you share it as a school? I mean, again, it's something for you to reflect on. Is it a paragraph in your prospectus about the school's behaviour policy? And often schools will have a sentence which says that if parents would like a copy of that behaviour policy, they can contact the school. That's all good, and that actually meets the independent school standards on provision of information. But actually provide them with a copy of your school's behaviour policy that is written in what I would call parent form, so that they know the bits which are really important. Make sure they know how to raise concerns with you if they feel their child has been bullied. So is there a step-by-step guide? Is that part of already what you provide to schools? Do you have a website where you can provide that information? If you're not doing that already, and I think there's quite a lot of schools that don't do so, because under this new guidance, you're expected, parents will be asked, do you know what you would need to do if your child was being bullied? Are your parents going to be able to answer that question confidently? Do you have procedures in place currently that already do a really good job of ensuring your parents know? Do you have an induction day or a morning where part of the information that you share with parents would be about your behaviour policy and your policy on anti-bullying? Is that shared, or is that something that you just would expect them to know because it's a paragraph in your prospectus or your induction pack? Do they need to know more information? Again, brothers and sisters, this is time to review your current practice. How can you ensure that parents know? What about parents that don't speak English well? Would they understand it? What could you do for them? So it's really important that all stakeholders are involved, that they're clear about those procedures, and that they know what's going to happen if they felt that their child was being bullied. Over my time in headship, I have had countless numbers of parents who have applied to my schools and have come to me with the concern that we are moving our child because they've been bullied in their previous setting and the school has not done enough. So it's really important that we are absolutely clear that this kind of behaviour would not be tolerated, most importantly because it is against the teachings of Quran and Sunnah. That's the fundamental point at which we start this conversation, that respect for others is an absolute must. And so therefore, these are the procedures on ensuring respect for each other. And this is what we do as a school. So really, please review your current practices. What is it that you can do to strengthen those practices? How are you going to share that information come September? Remember, we're talking about the start of September because this is now a legal requirement upon schools from September 2021.
Like Asida said, ask pupils, involve pupils. So ask them what is working well and what isn't, how they would like for the school to deal with bullying. To ensure that pupils are aware that it's not acceptable and that is part of the school culture. And what pupils can do, pupils to be aware of what they can do, what role they play in preventing bullying. So again, making it easy for them to report conflict between peers or, children that they see something's not right, making it easy for them to report it so they are being part of taking preventative measures. So making that very clear. And again, I'll go back to, you need to do what works for your pupils and your schools. So the measures you take really need to be personalized to your settings.
I think on that as well, Khadija, just as we've said before with parents, do pupils have their own guide on what they would need to do?
Yeah.
If they were facing anything of this nature, who would they go to? Does that guidance booklet or information booklet tell them what would happen if they were to report it? Does it reassure them? Does it provide confidence in the school systems? So many of our schools have anti-bullying ambassadors and all sorts of other ways of supporting. How are they involved in the process? And I think as well, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that schools have these anti-bullying ambassadors. Are you ensuring that their role is having impact? How are you evaluating their role? How are you ensuring that they are making a difference? Does that require review and evaluation as we move into the new academic year? And I think it's really important. Myself and Khadija have discussed for our own schools that one of the first things that we're going to be doing is reminding our pupils about our procedures, ensuring that they are clear right from the very beginning of the academic year, what the school's procedures are, what it is that we stand for, what it is that we don't allow, why it is that we don't allow it. We go, again, brothers and sisters, we go back to the teachings of Quran and Sunnah, our respect and our behavior towards others. From where does it come? And so, at the same time, this last part of the slide about when they find themselves as bystanders, we do not stand by and watch other people come to harm. How are we ensuring that our students understand that? How do we ensure that students know what to do if they find themselves in that position? So a really thorough assembly at the start of your new academic year, information booklets for pupils so that they are clear. The involvement of your ambassadors, if you have such a thing in your schools, how are they involved? Our ambassadors actually write some of the questionnaires that we have as part of our process. They take leadership of that. So it's really important that you're looking again and evaluating your current processes for ensuring that pupils understand the process and strengthening that moving forward, inshallah.
So implementing disciplinary sanctions. So schools to ensure that there are clear, consistent sanctions in place that portray the severity of bullying and that those sanctions give out a clear message to others that bullying is not acceptable. I'm going to say here that the sanctions need to be consistent. And again, give out a clear message to the rest of the pupils that bullying is not acceptable. Again, records must be kept of those sanctions. Any bullying cases, records should be kept, a summary of the case. And again, bullying support needs to be provided to the victim and the perpetrator after the case has been resolved.
And all of this as well, Khadija, to be very, very clearly recorded.
Yeah. And this has to be recorded in a separate bullying folder. So there would be a bullying folder which would have records of all your bullying cases, the support that was given to the victim and the perpetrator, and again, the record of sanctions as well.
Myself and Khadija have visited quite a number of schools where schools have not been able to demonstrate effective recording of bullying that's taken place in the school. And unfortunately, inspectors coming into those schools have also made that judgment, and it would be an independent school standard failure. So really important that your record keeping is thorough, and those records are kept separately, because that's part of what's required of independent schools to do so.
Yeah, and it is important that the schools have a culture of acceptance, that different people's differences are discussed openly. So you will get children that come from different backgrounds. So it should be that is discussed openly, and pupils are asked to empathize with each other about each other's situation. So a child might be a looked after child. So pupils should be, there should be a culture of acceptance and empathy, where the others are asked to put themselves in that child's shoe and what it would be like, rather than make that child stand out and be different, made to feel different. There should be a culture of acceptance, and that again, it's upon the school how you would deal with that. There are many workshops available. If you contact your local authority, local organizations, there are many workshops based on different aspects of bullying that can be delivered to pupils. You need to make a big deal about bullying, that it's not acceptable, and the different forms of bullying as well. Hasina, would you like to add anything there?
Yeah, I think again, part of your evaluation of your current procedures in light of the changes are that you do look at the curriculum access that pupils have to ensure that they understand why bullying is wrong in whichever form. And that, of course, as Khadija has mentioned, may mean that you invite external agencies, organisations to come and work with the children in your schools, or that children are able to go out to these organisations. Inshallah, with the start of the new academic year, we're now free from the restrictions that we've had over the last 18 months. And certainly it's important that pupils are engaging with different organisations. It brings a freshness to how children learn, and there are lots and lots available out there. Moving forward, I think this might be a good time to share that we will be providing much more support for our schools on safeguarding practices, and Khadija will be leading those sessions, and we'll be able to give you guidance on some of the organisations that work with schools, and the access that you can have to various workshops for staff, for pupils and parents, and so hopefully, inshallah, that will help you to build a really strong culture of anti-bullying in your school settings.
Again, I would, on this slide, I would advise that, like we said previously, to work with local organisations, work with the local children's social services and the police, and have them deliver case reviews to children about how different types of bullying can become serious criminal offences. Because it is important that children are aware of the different forms of bullying and how at a certain point it can become a criminal offence. Sorry, just back. Yeah, and again, I would say work with the local police, children's services about the different kinds of abuse, give them case reviews, provide effective staff training. Now, staff training can be offered by the local authority. There are certain organisations like Kidscape, anti-bullying alliances that also offer effective staff training. It can be done internally as well. But it is important that staff are aware of how to deal with bullying, how to report bullying, and how to prevent bullying. The first and foremost is how to prevent bullying. Again, when it comes to bullying outside school, again, it is important that it is the school's responsibility to deal with that. A lot of times bullying outside school can happen online, so cyberbullying. So there are websites, Cyber Smile, Bullying UK, that can provide support and guidance on how to deal with cases of bullying of that nature. Make it easy for pupils to report bullying so they are assured that they will be listened to and incidents are acted upon. A lot of times we have pupils that won't report the bullying in the first instance. It'll only come to the school's attention when it's gone way beyond tolerance, and that's when the school will become aware of it. And when the children are asked, they will be like, well, we didn't think that we would be taken seriously. Again, we need to create a culture in schools that bullying is unacceptable. Where there are cases of bullying, we will be dealt with, they will be taken seriously. So children need to be reassured. And again, when it comes to reporting, the schools need to make it easy for pupils to report bullying. So they feel that it is something that we can easily report and will be taken seriously. The same way they should be able to feel that they can easily report bullying that happens outside school, and that again includes cyberbullying.
Just to say on that, the COVID situation and working remotely for such a long period of time over the last 18 months or so has meant that we've been able to communicate much more with our pupils through through a range of questionnaires. This is myself and Khadija in our schools. And we have set up a fortnightly questionnaire that we send out to our pupils, in which they are able to share any concerns about anything, including bullying. And that really gives us a very, very regular insight into how our children feel about school life and things that might be affecting them. And we're able then to move really quickly with addressing those. I have a team of staff who deal with pastoral and welfare care of our children, and they deal with it on the day that they receive any concerns by that particular pupil. Sometimes schools have systems in place, but those systems aren't effective enough in ensuring that pupils can report concerns easily. So pupils don't want to report it in a form class setting in front of others. There may be a suggestion box or a concern box in your school somewhere. And of course, that would mean if they were to put something into that box, would other people see them doing that? And again, some children find that very, very difficult to do. So how are you ensuring that for all pupils in your school, you have the right means available for them to share and report any concerns that they have, including, of course, concerns related to bullying? And that's really important. And the reason that I'm particularly sharing this with you is because in a school that I visited, inspectors asked a number of children about whether they would report any concerns about bullying. And some of them, the younger ones in that group, were particularly concerned about reporting in case older children were to come back and talk them about the fact that they had raised concerns. And just their hesitation in the presence of inspectors was enough for the standard on bullying to be unmet, because inspectors concluded that children do not, all children in the school, remember it's about every single child in your school setting, should feel confident that they are able to report any concerns, including those around bullying, to a person within the school, and that those concerns would be listened to. So we've mentioned it in the first session that it's not one size fits all. You've got to look at different personalities, different year groups. Older children may be more confident in reporting concerns. Younger children may not. Children with vulnerabilities or those on your SEN register. There can be all sorts of reasons why a different avenue is required. So when, again, you are undertaking this evaluation of your current processes, you are absolutely clear that you've got something for everyone, that children can do that. Now, of course, with what we introduced, our children could do it from home. They still do it from home, even though we're back at school. That's something that's sent out to them fortnightly, and it's reviewed by a team of senior leaders during that week. So I can say quite confidently that we have very clear processes that meets the needs of all our children in the school and where they're able to raise concerns. So again, just make sure that you are confident that your procedures are thorough enough for children to raise concerns. Thank you, Khadija.
Schools must create a safe environment where pupils can openly discuss the cause of their bullying without fear of further bullying or discrimination. So again, when dealing with bullying, schools need to take a sensible and effective approach to ensure that the pupil that's reported the bullying is not open to further bullying. So sometimes we have to be very, very careful of how we deal with the situation. At first, it might be that you have to deal with it quite discreetly until you've got all the evidence and all the reports. And once it is established that it's a bullying case, then you can go forward with the sanctions, etc. But you need to ensure that the child, the victim, is at the forefront of it all, and that you're not exposing them to further bullying issues, whether that's on school site or out of school site. So it could be online, it could be outside school, etc. So that is something that we need to consider. Again, I would say that at the end of each term or even half term, schools need to review, like Hasina mentioned previously. It is important that schools review their bullying cases. Have there been any cases? Around what aspect have those cases risen? Is it a particular year group? Is it a particular issue that is causing the bullying?
And how have you addressed it, isn't it, Khadija?
Yeah,
I mean,
how it's been addressed.
That evaluation will allow you to, because what inspectors want to know is what lessons have you learned as a school? How have you changed practices? How have you improved practices? How have you reviewed your curriculum so that if children weren't aware, they're now aware? Really important. It's not just about brothers and sisters recording cases of bullying. It's about what are your next steps? How are you going to ensure that this doesn't happen again? What are you going to do as a school to improve your practices? And they will want to know that. They will ask you those questions, because actually, again, what I've seen in other schools is, in fact, I've been present at a school where an inspector said to leaders, "You have learnt no lessons." And I just remember those words so clearly, because it was quite a serious bullying incident. And the inspector said, "Well, you've changed no practices in your school to ensure that this does not happen again. So you've learnt no lessons." So please ensure that you are evaluating leaders, particularly head teachers and senior leaders. You should be looking at the number of incidences that are taking place in your school, and not just bullying. This could be, again, what we've mentioned already on peer-on-peer abuse. It could be on different behaviour incidences that are happening in your school. How are you reflecting upon these? If pupils were not able to share, why weren't they able to share? What stopped that from happening? How can you improve that process? And to be able to share that with inspectors when they come, to say, well, actually, yes, we knew there was a gap here because we took time to review, and as a result of that, we have now done this, this, and this. And we shared it with pupils, parents, and staff, and here is the evidence behind that. So really important that that is part of your procedures as a school.
Yeah, and it also, like Sina said, it will also give you an opportunity to reflect and review upon your preventative measures, because there will be certain measures that weren't effective. So then you would need to review and rewrite those preventative measures and put different measures in place to ensure that there are reduced cases of bullying in school. And obviously your next review and analysis would evidence that. Yeah, Hasina, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that a part 2, we will be obviously recording part 2 in a separate video, but the management of safeguarding and the responsibility of governors and proprietors and management within your school has been significantly strengthened. And I really want to emphasize that to you all listening today. They also should be able to report to inspectors on what the school has done, what the practices are, how you've improved practices, how you review your case files half-termly or whenever it is that you've chosen to do so. So if there are trustees and governors, proprietors listening to us today, that's important that you are also aware of what your school is doing to improve procedures. How are you evaluating those procedures? How are you ensuring that leaders are creating a safe environment, that your pupils can, as Khadija has written there, openly discuss any problems with bullying? You also have that responsibility, and as I said, significantly strengthened under the revised guidance.
Okay, and I've also attached the link at the bottom, which is guidance on preventing and tackling bullying. So schools can make use of that and go back to that. It's the measures will be there, and again, but like I said, they are just generic measures that schools can use, but you do need to personalize it according to your settings, but all other guidance will be in that document, inshallah.
I think celebrating success as well, Khadija, as you've written there.
Yes, sorry. Yes, it is important to celebrate success. And again, you'll know that from your analysis, where there has been a reduced cases or there have been no cases of bullying because your preventative measures have been effective, then you do need to share that with pupils and you do need to celebrate the success. Because it is going to strengthen and create that positive ethos around the issue of bullying in school. Zina?
Yeah, I think, I mean, what you've said about sharing it with pupils, again, assemblies, especially from leadership, to say to pupils, well, this half term, it's been absolutely fantastic. You know, we've seen some really beautiful display of respect for each other, and you would share examples. We had a little girl that's joined us in our primary school from another school, and she's got a number of medical needs, and she'd had a really hard time in her previous school. And when she came to our school, we had a little girl in her class who just took her under her wing, and we saw a real display of compassion and care to ensure that this pupil was well taken care of. And we made a big deal of it. We celebrated it in assembly. We made sure that pupils were able to see, and it wasn't just this particular young person that was supporting this child. The whole class was fantastic, but this particular young pupil really went over and beyond in ensuring that she was taken care of, because she's quite a sick child. And really, it's about ensuring that the whole school community knows about all the fantastic things that are going on in your schools. How are you celebrating that? Are you able to say, you know, we've seen some really fantastic things this half term. This is what we've seen. So make sure your pupils know, because they are going to be your evidence for inspectors when you have your inspections. They are going to be the voice of the work that you are doing to safeguard children. And I think that if they don't know all the good things that are happening in your school, then that's something that certainly will need to be addressed. Okay. So that's the end of our section session. So inshallah, we'll be coming back to the third session shortly, inshallah. Jazakallah.